Mythic Mischief is an abstract strategy game with easy-to-learn asymmetric factions for 1 to 4 players. You play as one of 7 unique factions of Mythic Manor students, vying for control of the school library. The Tomekeeper roams the Isles, removing any students in their path. It's the perfect chance for the students of Mythic Manor to prove once and for all who is best in class. On your turn, you may use the abilities of your faction to manipulate nearly everything on the board, moving your mythics, moving your opponents, shifting bookshelves, and distracting the Tomekeeper, all with the goal of placing your opponents on the path of the Tomekeeper. When an opponent is caught by the Tomekeeper on your turn, you score a mischief point. The team with the most mischief points at the end of the game is the winner. To set up the game, please check out the rulebook or our quick setup video. Each turn consists of 3 phases: the Mythic Phase, the Tomekeeper Phase, and the Cleanup Phase. First up, the Mythic Phase. Your faction's available actions are laid out on your faction board and are kept track of with the action dice. As you spend each action, tick down the appropriate dice as you play. You may use any number of your actions on your turn, with any of your mythics in any order, as long as the corresponding ability has an action dice with a number face up. Each mythic faction has 4 actions. Each faction's abilities vary in function, but the 4 actions follow the same structure. 1 allows you to move your own mythic, 1 to move other mythics, 1 to move bookshelves, and 1 to manipulate the position of the Tomekeeper. We'll cover each faction's abilities specifically at the end of the video, but there are some specific rules that apply across all factions. First up, the move action. All factions' movement rules are the same. Move your mythic to dodge the Tomekeeper and get in position to set up your other actions. You may spend 1 move to move into an adjacent empty space, or spend 2 moves to enter an adjacent cluttered space. You may not move through bookshelves or the Tomekeeper, but you may, however, pass through enemies and allies as long as you have enough movement to land in an open space. Next, moving other mythics. Each mythic faction has a unique way to move other mythics around the board. We'll cover each faction individually at the end of the video, but something to remember is that you must move the other mythic into a space that is unoccupied. This means you can't move a mythic directly into the Tomekeeper. Next, moving bookshelves. Each faction also has a unique way to move bookshelves, which we'll cover individually, but one rule applies across all factions. You may not completely wall off a section from the rest of the board, or move bookshelves along the outer edge of the board. Lastly, we have the Distract ability, which is the same across all factions. Distract allows you to move the Tomekeeper 1 space toward any one of your mythics. To use the Distract, pick one of your mythics and move the Tomekeeper 1 space towards it, using the quickest available route, ignoring the movement penalty from clutter. If the Tomekeeper catches an enemy mythic during a Distract action, remove them from the board and immediately score 1 mischief point. Each faction also has 1 legendary ability, as well as an after-lunch special, which we'll cover in detail for each faction at the end of the video. To use a legendary action, pull the tome off of the slot next to the ability, removing it from the game. Then follow the instructions on your faction board. Everyone starts the game with a tome on their legendary ability, giving you 1 free use per game. Last thing to cover about your Mythic Phase. On your turn, if one of your mythics enters a space that has a tome on it, take that tome and place it by your mythic faction board. You will use this during the Cleanup Phase to upgrade your abilities or gain a single use of your legendary ability. The Mythic Phase of your turn ends when you run out of actions or whenever you choose to stop spending your actions. Once you've wrapped the Mythic Phase, it's time for the Tomekeeper Phase. Here, the Tomekeeper moves towards its destination, catching any mythics in their path. Each before or after lunch card has 3 destinations marked on the card. These destinations are marked on the board with numbered tokens, showing in order where the Tomekeeper is headed. The lunch cards also show the amount of movement the Tomekeeper will take each turn, moving 4 spaces before lunch and 3 spaces after lunch. Move the Tomekeeper along the quickest route towards their next destination, which is the lowest numbered token on the board. So, if this is your first turn, you would move the Tomekeeper 4 spaces towards the first destination. If multiple routes are quickest, then the active player chooses which of these quickest routes the Tomekeeper will take. So, for example, in this setup, there are 2 routes towards the destination that each take 4 moves. I'm going to choose the one on the right, catching this wizard in the process. Remember, it takes 2 moves to enter a cluttered space, even for the Tomekeeper, so be sure to factor this in when determining the quickest path. When the Tomekeeper reaches a destination, remove the token from the board. The Tomekeeper then heads to the second destination, and then towards the third. If the Tomekeeper reaches a destination marker and it has extra movement, they will continue moving towards the next marker. If the Tomekeeper reaches the third destination marker and has extra movement, they will then move towards the center square of the board. If the Tomekeeper enters the space of any mythic, remove them from the board, scoring 1 point if that mythic is an opponent, and losing 1 point if the Tomekeeper catches your mythic. After the Tomekeeper has finished their movement, on to the cleanup phase. Here, players reset their faction boards and place any tomes gained during their Mythic Phase. First, move all used action dice to the leftmost empty slot on each ability track. An easy way to check if an action has been used this turn is to check if the number on the dice matches the number above the slot. If the numbers match, leave the dice where it is, saving these actions for your next turn. Next, add any tomes collected during your turn. A tome can be placed on any track on your faction board to upgrade an ability. Place it on the slot furthest to the left that is not already occupied by a tome. If an action dice currently occupies a space that a tome is placed in, that die will move 1 space to the right. A tome can also be placed on the legendary ability slot of your faction board if it's currently empty. Remember, to use a legendary action, remove this tome from its slot during any following turn. Next, boost 2 of your abilities. To boost an ability, move a dice 1 space to the right on its track. You may boost the same ability twice if you'd like. When boosting your movement ability, be sure to boost the rightmost dice first. Lastly, reset all action dice to match the number above the space that they're in. That concludes the player's turn. Players then take turns switching back and forth between the 2 teams. I'm going to run through a full turn of Mythic Mischief. I have set up a 1v1 game. I'm playing the Wizards faction against the Zombies faction, and we're going to start with the Mythic Phase. The first thing that you're going to want to do on a Mythic Phase is figure out where is the Tomekeeper headed. So right now, it's going to be headed towards this first destination token. The quickest path is this direction. At the moment, there's nobody on the path, so let's see if we can do something about that. First up though, I'm going to use a distract action. So I'm going to tick that down on my faction board here. And distract allows you to pull the Tomekeeper towards any one of your mythic characters. So I'm going to use this one right here and pull the Tomekeeper 1 space towards it. That then runs into my opponent, taking them off of the board and scoring a mischief point for me. So I'm going to move that here on the tracker. So now that I've moved the Tomekeeper actually now has a new quickest route to the destination. It's now going to be moving in this direction, which isn't great. That means my character would be taken off the board, but that's all right. We've got plenty of actions left to do something about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using my movement actions. I'm going to move 2 spaces onto this clutter right here and then another movement right here. So I'm going to tick that down on my board using 3 of my movement actions. Then I'm going to use my shift ability. The shift ability allows me to slide a bookcase. So first I'm going to tick that down on my board and I'm going to slide this bookshelf right here. This is great because it really alters the path of the Tomekeeper. Now the Tomekeeper, the fastest route to that destination marker is like this. Next, I'm going to use another one of my movement actions to move right here, picking up this tome. I'll put this on my faction board. Then, finally, I'm going to use my warp ability, allowing me to switch places with another mythic. So now this zombie is right here. That's all I've got for my Mythic Phase. I'm going to now move into the Tomekeeper Phase, where we move the Tomekeeper 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces towards its destination, catching this zombie in the action, giving me another mischief point. Next, we move into the cleanup phase. First, we're going to slide any used action dice to the left. I've only got one, which is my shift. That's the only one that can move to the left. So move that all the way down. Then add any tomes that we got on our turn. I got one. I'm going to use that to upgrade my shift ability. Then we're going to be able to boost 2 action dice. So I'm going to boost my shift ability once, and I'm going to boost my move ability. Then finally, we reset all of our action dice, which means we need to line up all of our dice so that the number on the dice matches the number above the slot. And that concludes a turn of Mythic Mischief. Before you start your next turn, be sure to place any of your previously caught mythics back on the board. They may be placed onto any of the available secret entrances. These entrances are represented by the circle icons on the active before or after lunch card. If a space is occupied by another mythic or the Tomekeeper, you may not place there. If there are no available secret entrance spaces, you may then place your returning mythic anywhere on the board that is not occupied by tomes or another mythic student. Once the Tomekeeper reaches the 3rd destination on the before lunch card, the after lunch phase begins. Before the next player's turn begins, set up the next phase. First, remove any uncollected tomes from the library board. Then flip the before lunch card face down and flip the after lunch card face up. Lastly, add the new tomes and destination tokens as shown on the after lunch card. Play then resumes with the next player's turn. Now that we are in the 2nd phase of the game, the after lunch specials at the bottom of your faction board may now be used. The game is over when either one team reaches 10 mischief points, or the Tomekeeper reaches the 3rd destination on the after lunch card. If the game is tied after the Tomekeeper completes the after lunch card, the team with the least amount of tomes on their faction board wins the game. To begin the game, have each team roll a dice. Whoever rolls the higher number may choose to go first or defer to the other team. The team who does not go first gains 1 free tome to upgrade any of their abilities. Once a first player is chosen, that player or team places all of their mythics onto the board, followed by the remaining team placing all of their mythics. When placing mythics at the beginning of the game, you may place anywhere on the board not occupied by the Tomekeeper, other mythics, or tomes. There are a few modifications to the game for 3 and 4 players. When playing with 3 players, 2 of the players will be on a team, playing against the 3rd player. The solo player will play the game as normal, using all 3 of their mythics, while the team of 2 will only place 2 of their mythics, for a team total of 4. When playing with 4 players, the game is broken into teams of 2. Each player will only play with 2 of their available 3 mythics, with each team fielding 4 mythics total. Players on a team take their actions simultaneously, working together on their combined turn. Each team is represented on the score tracker with only 1 token, and they score mischief points as a team. After all team members have either run out of actions or decided to save them for future turns, the Tomekeeper then moves as normal. Instead of boosting 2 actions in your cleanup phase, players on a team boost 1 action instead of the 2. Also, when playing on a team, only 1 tome color is placed on the board for the entire team. Whichever player picks up the tome will be the one to place it on their faction board during their cleanup phase. Mythic Mischief does include a single-player mode, which we'll cover in future videos. Now we're on to each faction. Feel free to skip ahead to the factions you're playing with, but if it's your first game, we'd recommend playing a 2-player game with the Frankenstein's monsters against the wizards. Remember, the move and distract abilities are the same for each faction, so we won't be covering those here. But a couple reminders that are true across all these factions, even though their moves are different. When moving other mythics, you must have a clear line of sight on the mythic you are moving. This means you cannot move a mythic when there is a bookshelf between you. Also, when moving other mythics, you must be moving the mythic to an open space. This means you cannot move other mythics directly onto the Tomekeeper or another mythic, but you may move them onto a cluttered space as long as it is otherwise open. When moving bookshelves, remember you cannot block off a section of the library entirely or move bookshelves to the outer edge of the library. First up, the Frankenstein's monsters. The throw ability allows you to move an ally or enemy from one side of you to the opposite side. This works in any direction, including on a diagonal. Next, the barge ability. Barge allows you to rotate a bookshelf into a connected space. The Frank's legendary ability is Intimidate. When activated, a neighboring opponent will move up to 2 spaces towards the Tomekeeper along the quickest route, ignoring any clutter. They will not enter the Tomekeeper's space, and you cannot intimidate an opponent through bookshelves. Lastly, the Frank's after lunch special is the Trap. Starting after lunch, you may trap an adjacent enemy once per turn. To do this, drop the trap token beneath any adjacent opponent. This mythic then may not move on their next turn. They can, however, be moved off via abilities other than a move. Next up, the Vampires. Their Lure ability allows you to move an ally or enemy 1 space directly towards you. You may activate the lure on any mythic that you have a line of sight on, not blocked by the Tomekeeper, bookshelves, or other mythics. This works on straight lines in any direction, including diagonally. The Conceal ability allows you to rotate a bookshelf around your space. The Vampire's legendary ability is Trance. When activated, all neighboring enemies not blocked by a bookshelf will move 2 spaces in any one direction, ignoring any clutter. Lastly, the Vampire's after lunch special is Blood. Starting after lunch, you collect blood tokens by passing through an opponent during your turn, while using a move action. At the end of your turn during the cleanup phase, you may trade in any blood tokens to boost 1 additional dice. If you'd like, you may save blood to spend on future turns, but you may only have 4 blood tokens at one time. Next up, the Zombies. The Infect ability allows you to move an adjacent ally or enemy 1 space in a diagonal direction. The Toss ability allows you to move a bookshelf to the other side of the opposing space, or to the other side of a space you are already in. The Zombie's legendary ability is Stench. When activated, the neighboring Tomekeeper will move 2 spaces directly away from you, ignoring clutter. You cannot use Stench if there is a bookshelf between you and the Tomekeeper. Lastly, the Zombie's after lunch special is Decay. Starting after lunch, once per turn, you may drop a Decay onto any space that you leave. Whenever an opponent enters a space with a Decay, you may move them to any adjacent empty space. Next up, the Wizards. The Warp ability allows you to switch places with a neighboring ally or enemy. This works orthogonally and diagonally, but does not work through bookshelves. The Shift ability allows you to slide a bookshelf 1 space along its current orientation. The Wizard's legendary ability is Teleport. When activated, move a wizard to any unoccupied space in the library. Lastly, the Wizard's after lunch special is Portals. Starting after lunch, once per turn, you may drop a portal on your current space. Portals are then considered adjacent spaces to each other for you and your allies. After both portals have been dropped, you may, once per turn, move 1 of those portals to your current space. Also, you may use your Warp ability in conjunction with the portals. This would allow you to switch places with an ally or enemy on the other side of a portal. Next up, the Trolls. The Drag ability allows you to move an adjacent ally or enemy into a space that a Troll mythic has just moved out of. Their Smash ability allows you to permanently remove any adjacent bookshelf from the board. The Troll's legendary ability is Launch. When activated, move a neighboring ally or enemy as far as you want in any one direction, orthogonally or diagonally. You may launch the other mythic over other mythics, the Tomekeeper, and even bookshelves, as long as it travels in a straight line and lands on an unoccupied space. Lastly, the Troll's after lunch special is Staging. Starting after lunch, you can place the Troll bookshelf once per turn anywhere on the board not already occupied by another bookshelf. Trolls may move freely through the Troll bookshelf, but all other mythics as well as the Tomekeeper treat this as a normal bookshelf. Next up, the Witches. The Enchant ability allows you to move a neighboring ally or enemy 1 space clockwise or counterclockwise around your mythic. The Manifest ability allows you to take a bookshelf from the board that is adjacent to one witch and place it adjacent to a different witch. The Witch's legendary ability is Remodel. When activated, rearrange 2 bookshelves and 1 clutter anywhere in the library. Lastly, the Witch's after lunch special is Bewitch. Starting after lunch, once per turn, drop a Bewitch token under a witch. Any mythic on the space cannot be moved off of it by their opponent. The Bewitch token then stays where it is until you decide to move it again. Next up, the Ghosts. The Possess ability allows you to move a ghost mythic into an occupied space using a move action. You then may move that mythic to any open adjacent space. The Animate ability allows you to move a bookshelf with you during a use of one of your move actions. The orientation of the bookshelf must stay the same. You can move multiple spaces before placing the bookshelf, but each movement of the bookshelf requires an Animate action. The Ghost's legendary ability is Haunt. When activated, drop a Haunt token under one of your ghosts. Your opponents can no longer move through or occupy this space on the library board. The Tomekeeper, however, can move through or occupy the Haunt token. Lastly, the Ghost's after lunch special is Ethereal. Starting after lunch, you may spend an extra move action to move through any bookshelf. Well, that does it. We hope you enjoyed learning how to play Mythic Mischief. If we missed anything, please let us know in the comments, over on Board Game Geek, or hit us up on Discord and ask us there. If you're interested in a more advanced or more intense version of Mythic Mischief and you have the big box or 2 copies of the game, be sure to check out the Blitz mode in another video. Thanks so much for watching.